Good afternoon, or good evening, or good morning, depending on when you're watching this podcast. This is the first of a series of podcasts that Nick and Kevin and I will be doing. And our purpose behind these is just bringing some heightened awareness to particular items, especially those items that you're hearing about in the news or the financial news media. Here we are sitting here June 30th. If you look at the various indexes, the Dow's down in the 15% range, where the NASDAQ's down probably close to 30%. And now we're starting to hear the dreaded R word, if you will, the recession word. And we kind of thought we'd spend a few minutes today just sort of going through and kind of putting that all into perspective for you. And Kevin, why don't you kind of address for us initially, just tell us what is a recession defined as, or how do we say, is it a recession or not?
Right. So historically, it's 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth is how a recession is defined. We've had clients, and I've even had friends, ask me about, what is a recession and how is it defined? So I did a little bit of research on it, and actually it's the National Bureau of Economic Research declares when we are in a recession. So not only do they involve GDP numbers, but they also look into employment, wages, income, and it's actually, a significant decline over a few months. So are we in a recession today? Yeah, and it's a gray area, and I think that's what the new definition is kind of wanting to bring in. It's not necessarily a cut and dry when we are in a recession or not.
And probably most often, most of us, I know I do, when I hear the recession word, I think back to 08, 09 being the most recent, and certainly the most profound one we've had since the Great Depression. It kind of put us in perspective of, is every recession a bad thing for the marketplace?
Yeah, well, doesn't always come with a bear market. Bear market being a 20% decline. So what was it? 8 out of the last 12 have actually been, have seen a bear market come with that recession. But the market doesn't have to go down substantially with recession. Also, that recession doesn't have to be the same severity. Even with that less defined metric, we don't have an exact definition around it anymore. But from what I've seen, the different economists will be all over the board. Are we in one? Yes, no. There's a high probability. There's a low probability. We can kind of find someone on each end of the spectrum. But the ones that we do find some agreement that if there is a recession, that it will be pretty mild.
One of the things I've always correlated with, I've had the pleasure of being in this business for 43 years now, and generally every time we've been in a recession, one of the most immediate things I've noticed is, building contractors, commercial and, personal type contractors, are looking for work. I don't seem to feel that's the case today, Kev. Can you kind of give us a perspective on that?
Right, and our unemployment's at 3.6%. So, if people are wanting to work, jobs are out there, and I think that's a big thing to look at as well. But, talking to clients and friends, construction is booming. You want to get some work done. It's 6 months out before they can even have a look at it. So I think that's a telltale sign of the economy is still growing and business is hot. Another thing is in terms of inflation. I think the consumer is well prepared to take on higher costs. In 2020 and 2021, we had excess savings of $2 trillion for the consumer. So I think they're able to take on some of this inflation, and we're just now starting to see the behavior change of the consumer, dealing with the higher costs.
Yeah, there are enough people that could absorb that higher cost, and probably even some people who are maybe even accelerating things that they wanted to do because they want to do it now while it's potentially less expensive.
Well, highways certainly don't seem any less crowded than they did,
right?
Pre-COVID, if you will. Just kind of get a feel for things in terms of where are we going to go with this market, guys? I think that's probably one of the greatest fears we all have is the loss, if you will, the loss of our monetary value. Money's an emotional type of decision for us. How do we put in perspective where we are today and think about past recessions and where, how do we process this?
I'd see that, regardless of whether or not we are in one, the market seems to, there's a lot of agreement that the market certainly has priced one in. So to what extent has that economic activity actually declined? It's a great question. But if we're still kind of all over the board on if one's happening, but we've priced one in, that seems to mean that there's a pretty decent opportunity out there. That not necessarily a time to run for cover.
Kev, the news media tends to focus on the negative. What other positive things are out there from an economic perspective that you can add to the conversation?
Right, like I touched on, I think unemployment is so low and the business is booming. And I think times like now, too, is the importance of having a diversified portfolio, more so when the market's going up, and having that risk tolerance where you need it to be. You're able to take on these times a little better, and, just the importance of sticking to your long-term plan is important.
One of the things we've always focused on in looking at the market is corporate earnings. What do you think going forward? How's corporate America doing?
Yeah, certainly projections show that earnings are going to continue going up. In spite of all that's taking into account all of the recent data, projections still show corporate earnings going up, and that's one of the biggest drivers of the market, right? You think about that PE ratio, that price to earnings ratio. It's been a little high, a little elevated, and it's come down certainly as the market has dropped, and we're back well within long-term averages. So there's not really that fear that if it's going to go down any further, it's going to be a pretty extreme event beyond what we've seen.
Okay. Thanks for listening. Let us know your thoughts regarding the podcast, good, bad, and different. If you think this is a great way for us to communicate with you going forward, just as hot topics hit the news media, we're welcome for you to shoot us ideas. If you'd like to address certain things on a podcast, we're happy to do that as well. Appreciate the time. Have a great one. Take care.